Did you know that the number one regret of the dying is that people did not live the life they wanted? Hello, welcome. My name is Sheila Zito. I am a cancer survivor. My life hasn't always been the way it is today. I remember the day I became 30. I woke up and I realized how unhappy I was. I was living in a very abusive marriage. I had a 4-year-old son and I was expecting another one. I just did not want to leave the room I was in. Everything was so dark and bad. I was living with my ex-husband, his mother, one kid, another kid coming in a 40 square meters apartment. We did not have space. We did not have money. I was the only adult in the house. I was the only one working, and I was just making ends meet. Things were very hard, very difficult. I moved away from my family. I was convinced that nobody loved me, and my life was very miserable. But that day, I woke up, I remember out of bed, and I knelt down and I started praying. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I did not want to be there anymore. A few months later, my baby was born, my second baby. In the very same year, a few months later, I was diagnosed with melanoma. My baby was only 4 months old. The hardest thing for me was that I had to stop nursing my baby, and that's all that really mattered to me, my two boys. I did not understand what was happening to me. I think I was in denial. I just had no idea, no concept of what all that meant at that time. It was very difficult. I was so busy raising kids, having my 9 to 5 job, and really having to provide for my family that I did not have time to understand what was really going on. It wasn't until 2 years later when I had some symptoms and they decided to do a full scan in my body. They found 10 nodules in my lung. At that moment, I think it finally rang the bell for me. I finally got it. And I made a decision. At that moment, there was my time. That was it. That was my turn. My youngest son was only 2 years old, and I decided that I wanted to go on a trip, on a vacation, finally, for the first time, because I decided I was gonna die. And even though my ex-husband, he did not understand, went along with my idea, we found a way to make that trip happen. So my kids will have memory, would have some pictures with me. So once I passed, they'll know how I looked like, how I was, how they were with me. It was a very difficult period of my life. I was in an MBA program. I talked to them saying, this is it, I'm gonna die. There is no reason for me to continue this. And I started going that route for a few months. And I remember coming back to the hospital, talking to the doctor. And he said, you need to come back in 6 months that we're gonna take a look and see what's going on, if there are more nodules or if they have grew, if they're bigger. And I told him in 6 months I'm not gonna be here. So he asked me, would you feel better if we said 3 months? If you come back in 3 months and repeat the exams? And I said, yes, sure. I decided to be so connected. I started my deathbed. I started my farewell party. I started organizing my documentation, my house, my things, because I did not want the people to see mess or any things that were misplaced or documentation, passwords, money. I was really down, very depressed. I was not connected with my kids anymore. I was not participating in their lives anymore. I was still at work, going to work every day. And I remember 3 months have passed and I went back to the hospital. I went to work and then went to the hospital. When I came back home, I remember this scene that I will remember forever. My boys were playing on the floor in my very small apartment. We used to put a couple of blankets on the floor so they would sit there and play. We had this kids toy we used to call castle, like a Lego for little kids, and their pieces were like almost like hashtags. I just came in through the front door in the living room, went going to my bedroom, and then I heard something. And I remember when I heard, I turned, I looked, into the living room. And I heard my oldest son saying to my youngest, "No, that's not how you do it. You see, you put this one here. That's how you do this. That's how you build this." So in that moment, I turned and looked at them. And when I turned, I saw this light coming from above, coming in my voice. And I heard like angels singing. And it was such an emotional moment for me. It was so strong. And I looked at that and I said, not being able to participate in my kids' lives, not watching them going to school and growing and playing with them, and watch them graduating and getting girlfriends and starting to work and building their lives and building a family. No way! I want that. I want to be part of their lives. So help me, God. In the very moment, I had no idea what happened, but I knew that there was such a transformation within me, in my heart, in my soul, that I truly wanted to live. I had no idea what to do, how to do, what was the next step. I had no idea of anything. But I really wanted to be part of my kids' life. I always come back to that moment, and I think was one of the defining moments in my life. I remember after that moment, their life became different to me. It was almost like before that moment, I wasn't paying attention to things. I wasn't aware of anything around me. I didn't care, or I was disconnected. I was maybe preparing to leave for my departure. But in that moment, everything mattered to me. Things kind of changed. Nothing happened in the world, but everything was different. Before, I didn't even know that there was a tree as I left my house, my little apartment. But after that day, I remember walking out of my apartment and noticing how beautiful were the format of the leaves of that tree that was right there. I started noticing colors. I started paying attention to things, to people, to smiles, to so many details that I was missing out before. I didn't ask for that. I did not understand that, but it happened and it was so clear, so real to me. It was incredible. So much has happened since that moment. A year later, I ended up by leaving my husband. It was a very bad situation. He was trying to chase me and God knows do what. It was very complicated to live there, to take my boys with me. It was a very stressful moment of my life. Very bad for me, for the boys, for him, for his mother. Very sad. But thank God it passed. We overcame that. My life, I was drowning in that. Things were so hard. I had no place to live. I had no place to go. I had nothing. Everything I had was in that apartment. And I decided that I couldn't do that anymore. So I asked for help. My mother welcomed me, even though we haven't talked for years. Immediately, as I called in the middle of the night saying that my husband was chasing me, trying to kill me, they opened the gates. They welcomed me. They protected me. I don't know how. A couple of years later, I started looking for apartments because I wanted a place to live with my kids. And I couldn't really afford them. But I remember I started looking for apartments around the 5,000. Nothing really fit. Nothing really was what I was looking for my kids. A mother living with her kids by herself, there's safety, there's so many things. This was all back in Brazil. Safety there is not really something that you can count on. So this was a very important thing for me. The schools my kids were going to go to, their safety, their future, and myself too as a single mom or a double mom, right? Because I was really playing mom and dad's role. Never had any help from their father. He couldn't afford anything, but God blessed me. I cannot explain how or what happened or how it was, but I ended up by buying an apartment that was 230,000, and I did not get into mortgages or anything like that. I talked to the owner and I made a proposal, and I told him, don't be upset with me, I'm gonna make a proposal. That's how I can afford. And I remember I used to get paid every other week, and I told him, I'm gonna pay you every other week. And I was just taking the money from my necessities with the boys, the school, the food, groceries, the condominium fee. the gas, everything else was going to the apartment. In 2 years and a half, I paid off that property. A single mom or a double mom. So much has happened in my life. The most strange thing, do you remember that day that I became 30? After I prayed, I took a piece of paper and I wrote down the way I wanted my house to be. And I remember writing down 1 master suite, 2 parking places, a living room like this, like that, mirrors here and there, in this kind of lights, in this kind of flooring, in this kind of this kind of that. I really got into details the way I wrote everything. And I remember the day I got the keys to my apartment. I had my parents there. Once they left, I remember kneeling down and looking up to pray in gratitude for what I was able to accomplish. And when I did that and I looked up, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. That apartment was exactly the way I had it described in that piece of paper. And I never found the piece of paper. But it was incredible what happened. And so much into my life had happened like that. I can't begin to explain.